for October 16th, 2019. We'll start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the September 18th, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 18th regular meeting.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The next item is the reappointment of Edward Flanders as the building official through October 31st, 2023.
I make a motion to reappoint Edward Flanders as the building official through October 31st, 2023.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Next, we have a budget transfer request. The transfer from the assessor appraisal software project to a new project, Exchange Server and Email Archiver. Becky Osliger, the combined technology director for the Board of Ed and the town of Suffield, has made this request. In essence, it is because the assessor appraisal software project, we do not need the entire amount that was budgeted last year, and we really are in an emergency situation of needing this archiver appliance simply because we are not able to comply with the Freedom of Information Act requirement that all emails, etc., are backed up. And so Becky wants to take care of this issue sooner rather than later. The Board of Finance already approved this last night at their meeting, and so I'd ask that we also approve this.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer from assessor appraisal software project to a new project, Exchange Server and Email Archiver. And it looks like it's in the amount of $13,100.
Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have the update on the relocation of the highway garage to 1160 South Street. So we, since we met last, it's about 8 weeks ago, give or take, we took some of the feedback that we received at the various walkthroughs of 1160 South Street by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Permanent Building Commission, and Economic Development, and I believe ACE members that attended some of the different, the 4 different sessions of walkthrough. And the developer, Kevin Casey, is going to speak to the changes and improvements. Why don't you want to head up to the podium? Sure.
Good evening. Thank you for having me back in front to give a summary and an update of what has been transpiring in the last couple months. Before I get to the details, I just want to say that the process that we have undertaken here over the last 2 years has really, it's really, I think, served the best interest of the town. And I deal with this whenever I do a project in a town, and I have municipal or state or federal regulatory things to deal with. So I've learned to be patient, and I've learned, kind of thick skin, and to take the feedback that comes when we propose something and we try and come up with a solution, and then see what we can do to make all the parties come together and realize that whatever project it might be is really in the best interest of not only me as a developer, but also as the other side, the other party, the town, or whatever it is. In this process, we proposed at the outset to first build a new highway garage, and then we took that through the various processes, Board of Finance, Planning and Zoning, Board of Selectmen, and we really reached an impasse when the price to build a new building was determined sort of unofficially in talks with the Board of Finance to be probably too excessive. So we came back to the town and proposed to convert a building at 1160 South Street. Before I get into the details of what we've done to modify the proposal in recent months, it's amusing to me that anyone might say that this project or this process has been a rush, because when you spend 2 years trying to do something, and I think this is my 9th appearance in front of a board or a commission in the last year alone. So Planning and Zoning, Board of Finance, and your board, I think I've been in front of a public, meeting of some sort about 9 times now. So I don't think it would be fair for anyone to suggest that this has been rushed. The second thing is, we listened to, as the first selectwoman mentioned, there's been a lot of input from a lot of interested parties, people who clearly have the best interest of the town at heart. So we say, listen, we can convert this building, and somebody comes back and says, well, I have a problem with that, or I have a problem with this. And so we've tried to address each one of the concerns that have come up, 95% of which were good and valid concerns. A couple of them were, questionable. You scratch your head and say, why would anybody think this? But in any event, really because the first selectwoman has sort of charged me with answering every concern or be willing to sort of walk away from the project, we've really that again, at the behest of the first selectman, we had the town hired a structural engineer, and we hired 2 structural engineers to really examine the building and make sure that it was suitable and fit for the heavy construction grade vehicles that the DPW uses. And it was found out that it wasn't. And so we had a decision to make: could this be solved, or is it not solvable? And the consensus, the agreement between the town's consulting engineer and ours, was that by adding 6 inches of reinforced concrete to the floor in the garage, it would become adequate load capacity for all of the vehicles at the same time. So that was the first sort of the concerns that were brought up. That was the first one, and according to your own consulting engineer, that's been solved now. But really, the overriding concern I think that everyone had was the circulation internally in the building, because the building is a long, relatively narrow building. I mean, it's 80 feet wide, but it's 300 feet long, so clearly it's a rectangular building. And we hired the engineering and architectural firm that is actually been chosen by the town to do the town hall renovations, and that was really just fortuitous. It was something we found out after we hired them, which I think is really synergistic, because as they're coming up with programming for your town hall renovation, they can sort of help the town determine what space needs could be best met, maybe off-site, and so the entire town hall renovation might be optimized a little more. So we hired them, and they did a study that kind of showed that the trucks could go in the end of the building in 3 new large overhead doors, and then a series of turns and K-turns, and just sort of back themselves into bays and spaces. But nobody was really comfortable with it, and we listened, and I think the first selectman listened to the concerns that were brought up by a number of people, citizens and people on boards and commissions, and so we were kind of, we were willing to fight that it could work, but it really wasn't best case scenario. But something happened in the last couple of months that has changed all that, and I think it's a really important modification for the Board of Selectmen to hear. Obviously, First Selectman's been privy to it, but I'm not sure if everyone knows, but executive valet parking which is the abutting neighbor to the south, has been sold, or is being sold imminently. And we approached and reached an agreement with the buyer of Executive Valet Parking to actually acquire some property, about 1.4 acres of property along our southern border of the building and directly behind our parcel. So if you don't mind, Pete, can you hold this up? Okay, thanks. So I thought we were going to be in the small town hall, so I didn't have this projected, but here's the new building on Jeff's building here on South Street, and here's the 1160 South Street building. And this is the property that we've agreed to acquire, which is shaded in red here. So it's about 25 feet along the southern border, and it's about an acre directly behind the 1160 property. What this does is it allows us to have more setback from our southern side of the building to the property line. And what that does is that allows us to actually take advantage of the building the way it's really meant to be, and that is to have side access to the garage space. So we'll have 8 new overhead doors that will have double bays, and if you turn it over, you can see that. And we worked with the DPW on this, and this is no longer a project that we can make work, but it's actually, in the words of Mr. Servione, I'm not sure if he's here or not, but now this becomes basically a huge improvement over what they have now. So leaving aside the front office space, which I'll get to in a second, the bays will come in from the south side, and they'll be double loaded, so all of the vehicles can be at once. We'll also, in the building at once, we'll also have, obviously, the cold storage, all the space that we proposed before. It's just that now it's configured the right way. And we're going to leave the existing doors on the eastern side of the building. So in effect, the smaller vehicles can come in either way. They can come in from the rear, or they can come in from the main side, which will be the south side. So, you want to flip it over again? Oh, I'm sorry, this one. This one right here. So, as we had discussed previously and worked with the boards and planning and zoning people and Bill Hawkins, the town has a right-of-way for its property that abuts these 2 properties. And that right-of-way is going to be extended, and we're still going to utilize as an exit and entrance that driveway, and then build the fueling station on this part that's shaded in yellow here. The reason this is doable inside the same budget that we proposed to the Selectmen and to the Board of Finance is because we now no longer have to develop, clear, grade, paved, stormwater managed this larger parcel of the town's existing industrial land. So that savings inside of our budget allowed us to make the offer to the neighbors next door to acquire the property. And so we come out with a much better overall solution, because we're also utilizing less of the town's existing industrial, potentially developable space. So it's a major change. It's a tweak, if you will, in the sense that, the building is the same building. All of the things that we have, you can put that down, all the things that we had promised as part of the budget, the overall budget of $2.4 million, is the roof will be, the part of the roof that's degraded, there's a 6-foot section of roof that's degraded a little bit, and we've agreed to replace that, replace the gutter systems that led to that, and then the 20-year roof warranty will remain in place. That now the cement and repair any masonry around the building, paint the building inside and out, move all the DPW equipment, the fueling station, the generator, all of the things that the DPW requires for the building. But then the last piece of the puzzle, which is just undeniable and has to be considered, I think, by these boards, is that there's 10,000 square feet of office space that will be completely renovated and an elevator added for ADA mandates. And how that space is utilized is really a policy decision for the boards and commissions, but really, if you look at the combination of value between moving the DPW garage, which the primary motivation, of course, is to move it off of Filer Place, and the ability to have this extra office space, I think it's almost not arguable that the value is beyond anything else that would be as an alternative, I think. I think the town really makes out pretty well in this. And we're excited because I think we've solved the questions that people had that were legitimate questions.
Does this board have any questions for Kevin?
Kevin, the addition of on the south side of where that entrance driveway is that going to be graded? I'm assuming that's going to be graded?
Right.
I don't think it's graded.
No, right. So we were, part of the program that we've been from the start here is that we're going to reclaim that pavement, bury a new sewer line, because we're hooking the building up to the WPCA out front, and running sewers and utilities under anyway. So we're raising the grade marginally. It's got about 3 feet of grade, that we have to deal with. New paving, but that was all part of the program. And we're going to connect right to the paved portion of Executive Valet now. So the DPW will have this entire space. One other consideration, you can't see it here, but we have a blue dotted line here at where the office building transitions into the warehouse, and by doing this, it'll allow us to expand the parking in the front of the building. The DPW will not use, except in an emergency, and for fire emergency, we'll be able to use all sides of the building, but the DPW will function here, in and out, and we'll be able to expand the parking on the south side of the building, so the parking for the commercial space will be up to about 36 or 38 spaces.
So we're still going to enter the same way that originally was proposed?
Yeah, the entrance is going to be still to the north and then come in behind. So the portion here in yellow is the only portion of the adjacent town-owned property that will now be disturbed. So it's like less than an acre, I think, and it was proposed to be about 3 acres.
Any other questions from this board? Okay. Thank you, Kevin. So the next steps on this will be, as approved by our board and the Board of Finance, we are approved to move forward, provided we get an opinion of an engineer that this, as renovated, would be suitable as a town garage. So I will be giving all this information to our engineer that provided us the update the last time. And then I'll be calling the tri-board meeting that I mentioned of the Permanent Building Commission, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance on October 30th, which is 2 weeks from today, to discuss whether or not we're comfortable moving forward. So those are the next steps. And by moving forward, it would be going to the town meeting, at least as a first step. So that's that. Thank you. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of the status of the Bridge Street School. Okay, good evening. We're going to start out with facts about the Bridge Street School. It opened in 1924 and is 95 years old. It is not a historic property. It is not located within the Suffield National Register Historic District. It was decommissioned as a school by the Board of Education in 2004, which was 15 years ago, without a plan. That was our first mistake. There have been many failed attempts since that time to repurpose or sell the building over the years. There was a proposal that it become the site of the new library. There were proposals to sell the building and turn it into housing and perhaps mixed use, etc. I'm sure all of you remember those proposals. The current state of Bridge Street School. Public Works took pictures of the Bridge Street School, the interior of the Bridge Street School, 2 weeks ago, in light of roof leaks that we discovered last year. Public Works addressed last year's leaks by hiring a roof contractor to patch the roof. Pictures speak 1,000 words. And I'd like to invite building official Ted Flanders and Fire Marshal Mike Thibodeau to come up and help kind of discuss some of the items that we see inside these pictures. It's Ted. Yep. Ted and Mike. And I'll just flip through the pictures so you can see the interior of the Bridge Street School currently. Unfortunately, last year's roof patch did not stop the issues with the roof. Ted, what do you see in there?
This is a lot of decomposition of the walls, a lot of mold in there. I think this is the lower level. This is the ceiling on the lower level. You can see everything's... Okay, this is the ceiling on the lower level. You can see all the paint's flaking off. It was already determined that there's lead in this paint, and there's a lot of mold up there. This is a picture of another wall down on the basement level, and that's black mold growing in there. We had the health department go in there and look at it, and they determined that it was unhealthy and no one should be in the building. More deterioration, more mold growing. Ceiling on the lower level, it's collapsing.
Thank you. KERMA is the town's property and liability insurer. On September 19th, 2019, the town and the Board of Ed had its annual meeting with KERMA, in which we, every year, review all town properties and buildings. When we got to the Bridge Street School, the KERMA representative indicated that they would be calling in its risk management department and put the town on verbal notice that the Bridge Street School would likely lose coverage due to its poor condition. At that point, I asked the building official and the fire marshal to inspect Bridge Street School, as I was concerned for the safety of employees and others accessing the building. And in consultation with the North Central Health District, the building official posted the building as unsafe for human occupancy. Is there anything the two of you would like to add?
Not really. I mean, we had met with the health department some years before that, gone through the building, and at that time that they said they didn't think it was advisable for anybody to go in the building, and since then it's just gotten worse.
So what does this mean? It means that we now have a potential liability on our hands if this building isn't insured and someone gets hurt. If the building burns to the ground, we will not be reimbursed at all. It's what in legal terms you call an attractive nuisance. It is now something that is sitting there as a liability to the town of Suffield. So I felt I needed to bring it to this board to discuss now what should happen with this building. In 2008, First Selectman Scott Lingenfelter noted, in light of the deteriorating building, First Selectman's recommendation, we need to determine the future use of the building and land soon. The building should never have been shut down without knowing the future plans for it. It was a working and effective school at the time, but is now a rapidly deteriorating shell of a building. We are throwing taxpayer money at a problem by continuing to heat the building, and should winterize the building and shut off the heat this winter. Our past efforts to preserve the building by heating it have not worked, and there is no need to continue to spend taxpayer money to heat a building where the expenditure of that money is not creating any benefit. Any deterioration that may occur this winter as a result of our not heating the building will not be any greater than the deterioration that will occur if we continue to heat it as we have been. Furthermore, if the boiler were to fail this winter, then we have bought ourselves a much larger bill and will cause more damage to the facility than if we do not heat it at all. It's my understanding that at some point that boiler did fail, and unless someone tells me otherwise, it was never replaced, correct?
Well, I think Melissa put some temporary heat in there probably 3 or 4 years ago, so that there was heat in the building.
Right, but a boiler was not replaced. However, a few years ago, we were notified of the situation right when I started, and we put in the Modine, I think they're called Modine heaters. Is that right, Mark? Yes, Modine heaters, and we've done it every year. So again, I wondered how long this situation has been going on. So you'll see on April 9th, 2013, to Ed McEnany, Suffield First Selectman, our department, in conjunction with the Suffield Building Department, conducted an inspection of the vacant Bridge Street School. The inspection was conducted to determine if the building was safe to allow the building to be open to the public. Upon entering the building, there was a strong, musty odor, evidence of mold. During the inspection, it was noted that floors, walls, and the ceiling were in poor condition. Deteriorated paint chips were noted peeling and flaking off surfaces throughout the building. Based on the age of the building, most likely there is lead paint and asbestos in the building. Based on the present condition of the building, it is recommended that the building not be opened for tours to the public. So this was in 2013, recommended it not be open for tours. School Ad Hoc Committee started doing some of their due diligence and their work to present the plan that we're all familiar with. From Patrick McMahon to Ed McEnany. Ed, this is dated April 9th, 2013. We know that the North Central Health recommended against tours of the building. We believe tours of the building are essential for the public to get an understanding of the building's condition and layout. Our recommendation would be to allow for residents to enter the main hallway in order to peer into various rooms on the first floor. We would have a tape across each of the doorways so that residents would not enter into the rooms themselves. We would not have the residents view the downstairs classrooms, as that is where the greatest concentration of mold appears to be. Let us know if you agree with this approach. So let me be clear. Patrick McMahon, who was a town employee and was the Economic Development Director and a member of the Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee, against the advice of the North Central Health District, who is there to protect the public health, advised the residents, against their better judgment and against their health, enter the building. Why? To advance the interest of a small group of people who wanted to see this project. I take great offense to the fact that this group, who knew that this building was not safe, proceeded to allow people to enter this building. So then what happened? The Bridge Street School Community Center referendum. On October 8th, 2015, the town approved by 1,176 versus 1,076 votes by referendum the following. Shall the town of Suffield appropriate $8.4 million for renovations and improvements to Bridge Street School for conversion to a town community recreation center, and authorize the issue of bonds, notes, or temporary notes, an amount not to exceed 8.4 to finance said appropriation. That was what was voted on at the referendum. So what have we done since that time? This is an overview of the procedural history of the work that's been done on the Bridge Street School Community Center project since October of 2015. During 2016, the town engaged ATC Group Services, LLC, to perform, that's a typo, perform environmental consulting to determine the cost to remediate the building. During 2016, the town engaged Shipman & Goodwin LLP's construction law practice to assist the town in drafting RFP documents to protect the town's interests and accurately describe the scope of work for the Bridge Street School Community Center project. We all felt that this was very important because we weren't certain that in prior projects that we don't have to mention now, that the documents didn't adequately protect the town's interests. On September 22nd, 2016, a conceptual estimate from Gilbane Building Company that we received projected the cost of the project at $9,928,700, $1.5 million more than the town approved. So this was less than 1 year, and the price had increased by 18.2%. I'm not a construction expert. However, to me that says that the original estimate that was prepared by the Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee was not accurate. Remember, we are only approved to expend $8.4 million. And I want to make sure that I point out that the original Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee proposal did not include any money for environmental remediation. However, the Gilbane project did include about $500,000, give or take. Then on July 18th of 2017, the town of Suffield issued a request for qualifications and proposals to obtain a guaranteed maximum price for the Bridge Street School Community Center project. The sealed proposals were due to Public Works on August 16th, 2017. On August 25th, 17, the Permanent Building Commission invited contractors for interviews. In September 2017, the bids revealed that the town would have to expend between $300,000 and $500,000 to perform enough work to get an estimate to determine whether the project could be built for the dollar amount and the scope of work approved by the town at referendum. On September 13th, 2017, I informed the Board of Selectmen that I could not authorize borrowing against the bond because the town approved bond authorization provided that, quote, the costs of the project may be paid from temporary advances of available funds that the town reasonably expects to reimburse any such advances from the proceedings of borrowings. Based on the information that I had, an estimate that was $1.5 million more than we had approved, and some other information, including one of the proposals that was received by DPW, stated that an $8.4 million budget would only allow them to build a 2,000 square foot gym. The approved plan called for an 8,200 square foot gym. Based on that information, we could not authorize borrowing against a bond that we didn't reasonably expect would be issued because the project would be built. That is only one way to appropriate money in the town of Suffield, and we'll be talking about that in a bit. So to date, the town has expended approximately $116,090 on due diligence and work to advance the Bridge Street School project over the last 4 years. So the notion that the town has done nothing since this was approved is just frankly false.
Ability to bond. So in order to go out to the market and bond and essentially raise tax-exempt proceeds, the town has to have certify in writing that they have a reasonable expectation that the project is going to be completed at the cost estimated. So at this point, I understand that you're not sure of that. In order to, once you give that certification, it would allow me to then generate a bond council opinion that the bonds are valid and that they are issued for a valid tax-exempt purpose. If you were to go forward, and feel that you did have the ability to do the project at the $8.4 million, but then got into it, spent money, issued bonds, and in fact couldn't complete the project and couldn't raise, another appropriation, and had to abandon the project, it would be, have dire consequences for the town, which would include having to take the bonds out of the tax-exempt market, issue taxable bonds, enter into probably a settlement agreement with the IRS, possibly pay a penalty for possibly being found to have issued an abusive tax-exempt bond, and then you would end up with a taxable debt and no project, and still have the debt service to pay back on those taxable bonds. I understand that there's some question about whether a bond appropriation authorization is a mandate. There's well-settled law and precedent that once the voters and the citizens approve a project, that it's not a mandate that it has to be done. It's, the legislative body authorized the Board of Selectmen to act in the best interest of the town in order to move forward with the project. So if the project can't go forward, then it's, the board can make that decision. I think there's been some questions about what needs to be done in order to do that. It's not mandatory that there's a rescission. If there was going to be another use for the site, or you were going to be looking to do something different with it or authorize another resolution, you would have to deauthorize the current one. So there's nothing against doing a rescission of this bond authorization, but it is not mandatory. That's it.
Other ways of appropriating funds. So one way was then to borrow against the bond, and then the other way is...
Okay, so Melissa asked, how else can you appropriate money? So actually the appropriation just means that you're allowing the town to spend the money, and then it's the bond authorization or other ways that then you have to say, okay, now how are we going to pay for it? So you can either then pay for it by issuing bonds, by putting taxpayer dollars into a capital reserve fund and paying it out of reserves, or perhaps a grant. That's really the only ways.
Excuse me. Thank you, Sandy. Okay. Let's talk about the Kent Memorial Library and the PCB remediation expense. In case anyone doesn't know, Kent Memorial Library opened in June 2019, but with a $1.5 million overage on account of PCB remediation expenses. In addition, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and the federal EPA require quarterly air quality testing for PCBs that will cost the town at least $10,000 to $15,000 in current dollars per year in increased operating expenses for the life of the Kent Memorial Library building. Now I want you to remember that the environmental remediation was not factored into the original 8.4 estimate upon which the town relied to approve the Bridge Street School Community Center project and its authorization. The business plan recommendation to repurpose Bridge Street School into a community center prepared by the ad hoc committee on February 13th, 2015. This is from that. This is an excerpt from their thing that they handed out to all of us that we relied on in approving this project. EnviroScience Consultants, Inc. inspected the interior and exterior of the former Bridge Street School in late 2004. The results of the inspection concluded that some materials structures within the building contained asbestos and lead. The ballasts in the building were unable to be inspected, but are assumed to contain PCBs. The recommendation was to properly abate all hazards. Then TRC was engaged in June 2014 to further investigate the presence of PCBs within outdoor caulks, glazes, and surrounding soil. This is from the business plan, page 11. TRC was the environmental consultant on the Kent Memorial Library renovation project in which PCBs were overlooked. Similarly, the Bridge Street School Community Center business plan reports nothing about PCBs detected in TRC's investigation or any other investigation. It also makes no mention of mold, which we know is pervasive throughout the building. In addition, the architect that the Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee used was Silver and Petroselli, which were also the architects on the renovation of the library. So future townwide facilities planning. The superintendent, the first selectman, Parks and Recreation director, and the town planner will be meeting soon to discuss facilities needs townwide. We are going to work, our goal is to work together to broadly address needs in our community. I am delighted to have a willing partner in the Board of Ed and our new superintendent, Tim Van Tassel, that are willing to look at things wholesale for our small town and do more with less. To that end, ACE, Parks and Recreation Director, and I will be joining the superintendent and the Board of Ed for a walkthrough of all school facilities on October 26th to start the planning process. So now I just want to mention in closing that a lot of people put a lot of work into the Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee plan, and I commend them for their advocacy and their diligence. However, as you just heard with Kevin Casey, who showed the level of due diligence and work that took 2 years, and experts and advocacy to get to the point where we're at, where we know everything about that building. We also know everything about the town hall project that was also approved at the same time as the Bridge Street School Community Center project, because an incredible amount of due diligence has gone into that. And I would be remiss if I did not say that that project proposal did not have the level of oversight and due diligence put into it that would allow it to move forward. And so I did not unilaterally make a decision not to go forward. I knew that I could not borrow against a bond that could not be issued. The other option for appropriating funds was to go to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, and ACE, which is the Advisory Commission on Capital Expenditures, through the budget process, which the Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee did do in this past budget cycle. I believe they went 4 different times to the 7 meetings and asked that money be put into the budget to allow us from the 200 to 500,000 or whatever was needed to get to that guaranteed maximum price. The Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, and ACE all chose not to put that money in. And especially we chose not to put that money in when the Board of Finance was cutting the request by the Board of Ed by $500,000 at the same time. So again, I am sorry that this project cannot go forward, but I am committed to looking at other options and to working with the entire town, including the superintendent, to come up with a way that addresses the needs of the town going forward. Now, we are at a crossroads with the Bridge Street School building. As you've seen, my recommendation is that we demolish the building, as it is not historic, and right now it is presenting a liability to the town of Suffield. But I am proposing that we address some of the needs that were proposed by the Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee by installing a small playscape and a couple of fields. Mark Servioni mentioned that we could get, I believe, 2 large fields, and was it 4 or 8 small ones, Mark? About 6, which would address our facilities needs with respect to our fields. As we know, we don't have enough field space in town. It would also establish and accomplish, the intended purpose of being an economic development catalyst right in the center of our town by attracting teams and parents who will participate in games and activities and then hopefully frequent some of our restaurants in the surrounding area. It's not exactly the Bridge Street School, but under these circumstances, I believe it's the best choice. To know that there are PCBs in this building and to have absolutely no idea how they're quantified, and to know that they were not included at all in the $8.4 million budget in light of what happened at Kent Memorial Library is terrifying to me, and it should be terrifying to you. So if I've done anything over the past 4 years on this project, is to do as much due diligence as we can to get to the point where I am making sure that we are not wasting taxpayer dollars. Thank you. Okay, now I will open it up to public comment related to the Bridge Street School. I would ask that people limit their comments to 3 minutes and be respectful of everyone who is speaking. You need to say your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, everyone. Have a pretty good turnout for the weather being kind of nasty. Well, I don't intend to limit my comments to only 3 minutes, although I'll do my best. We just had about a 25-minute run with repetitive comments about certain things that I feel the first selectman is unqualified to present. Comparing the Bridge Street School to the library and hazards and this and that is an unqualified opinion. The ballasts that she speaks about, how many people?
Could you say your name for the record?
My name is Ray Pioja, and I live on River Boulevard. How many people know what the ballasts in the buildings are? Okay, two people. It sounds terrifying, it sounds scary. But what those ballasts they are within the fluorescent light fixtures. It's a little containment inside the light fixture. You take the light fixture out of the building, you take the PCBs away. PCBs were not invented until 1929. So there were no PCBs used in the construction of the building. All of the windows that may or may not have, I mean, they don't make glazing. They didn't use PCBs in glazing. I would refer this to the building inspector. And so the windows, they get removed, all that stuff goes away. So there's a lot of sort of fear-mongering that's been going on about what's wrong with this project. And I could spend as much time as the first selectman did refuting what her argument was. The fact is that it is a historic building, and a historic designation is pending. We're celebrating our 350th year here. It's up and coming. Over 120 years of that time was the span of the Bridge Street School. It occupied that amount of time within that 350-year frame. There's an incredible heritage, an incredible amount of heritage and lives and time spent, and to just wipe it away is based on like false information is a travesty, especially in light of 15 years of work to repurpose the building. Now I have some photographs here. I did a survey prior to the referendum. The photographs you saw were taken of the basement, and in fact, it looked a lot like that when the school closed. So,
You've exceeded your 3
I have
minutes.
to say that, okay, I'm going to continue for a few minutes because
You can have 2 more, but I would ask you to be respectful, and we'll have to call order in this forum.
yeah,
I'll give Ray my 3 minutes.
okay, thank you. All right, thank you. So the fact that the building was portrayed as it is a fallacy. And I'm trying to understand really why there's such a drive to destroy this building. And especially when Ms. Mack was elected with a promise to do everything she could. She congratulated us. She shook my hand after the debate and said, I look forward to working with you. She nodded, and I said, I'm on this committee. I want to do everything I can. She's done everything she can to not do anything. It's a fact. Read go in the town record, look at the minutes. In the first 6 months of her administration, she should have immediately realized that the building needed remediation and had done it. And as far as having Scott Lingenfelter as an authority on the subject, he could have had it done in 2009. We worked for 14 months on a report, presented it to him. He said, we'll talk about this later. It never reached the light of day. The public never saw anything about what we recommended for town offices at a cost of about $3 million. The remediation at that time, because of the crash and this and that, the labor and the money was the cheapest it's ever been. We could never get money like that again to remediate it. They were talking about $3 million, including remediation, to refurbish the building and use it. But this is what everybody was saying. It was town offices. It wasn't a community center. It was a park and rec, this, that, perfectly, nope, push it away. Now, I want to get to these photos, and I'm going to have these out front so folks can take a closer look at them. These are the photos that you saw up on the screen, okay? And most of them are of the basement, and as I said, it's been dirty like that for a long time. Now, I would like to get the building inspector's opinion. Is Ted still here? Oh, I'm sorry. Look right at it.
Ted, you don't have to engage in public comment.
I'm asking them a question. I have a perfect right to ask the building inspector.
Not
Most of
public
that
comment,
material that we have, that you saw there, all that would be removed with remediation. Is that correct? I mean, the mold. I mean, if they remediate it, they have to remove the tiles on the floor, the paint that's falling. I mean, they refurbish old buildings all the time, and that stuff is part of cleaning it up and getting it ready to either reuse or demolish. Would you say that's accurate?
Well, I mean, the issue when you remediate a building, especially for mold and those kind of things that are in this building, is that all the conditions that cause the mold to grow are still there. That mold within 6 months is going to grow back unless you do the whole building. So you can remediate it and you're still not solving the problem.
Is it talking about a different type of remediation for repurposing as opposed to demolition?
Well, I don't want to get into that discussion. I'm just talking about the building, the facts of the building. There's a moisture problem in the building coming from the ground, from the roof, from the sides. And until that's taken care of, which is going to cost a substantial amount of money, that mold, I don't care how much money you spend remediating it, within 6 months it's going to be growing back again.
So if the building, like they repurpose many old buildings, and like they did down in Windsor Locks with that Montgomery building. Okay, so that could have, they remove that stuff with the intent to reuse the building. So wouldn't it be, I'm trying to...
This is my last comment.
Yeah, I'm trying to make...
I mean, I talked on members of the Board of Ed that told me that 25 or 30 years ago, they had problems with the school being in that building because of moisture. Many of the teachers complained that they were getting sick from being in there. They closed off the lower level for classes. So this is not, this is an historic problem that's been with that building long before the selectmen got involved in it.
And in your opinion, that cannot be reconciled at all?
I didn't say that. I said you can.
Okay,
But
that's all I was asking.
But to think to remediate it is going to take care of the issue, it's not. You're going to spend $400,000, wait 6 months, you're going to spend more money to get it back clean again, unless you take care of all the surrounding issues. Okay?
So the point is that for whatever the cost, it could be cleaned and repurposed. It's a simple question. If it was going to be reused, it could be, the issues could be addressed. That's all I'm asking. It's either, well, no, they can't be addressed, or, well, yeah, they could be.
Okay, one last comment. About a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, Melissa approached me and asked me if there was any way I could get members of the ad hoc committee into the building. Some of the selectmen were there. Some of the other ones that were really active in the project met with Elger Roy. How many of you know Elger Roy? He might have built your house. He also did a lot of commercial projects. He built Glen Lock and Mall, Kimberly Nursing Homes, excuse me. And he went with them inside the building after they signed waivers, and they spent a few days with him, I believe. And his comment to me was that you could save the front wall and the rest of the building should come down.
You've used your next 6 minutes, and I'm going to have to ask you to please respect the rules of this forum.
I have one last comment to make, and I know a lot of other people have plenty of stuff to say. This is a photo survey that was done, I can hold it, just before the referendum. So these are actual pictures of what it looked like after 10 years of neglect. Now, these photos here, actually, the first selectman is making a case for her neglect of the building. She's making a case of her dereliction of duty. And I have to ask that you consider what we're looking at here when you talk about demolishing a building. And I'm going to just say goodnight and thank you, and let some other folks, there's a lot of other things that can be refuted about the first selectman's remarks, inaccuracies, etc. Thank you. Pictures do speak 1,000 words, and I invite you to look at these outside later. Thank you.
Tracy Hespel, 875 Copper Hill Road. I'm here to express my support for not proceeding with the Bridge Street School Community Center referendum at this time. For public opinion to think that holding off on this has been a unilateral stone wall crafted by a single individual reflects on who is or is not reading minutes to or attending our town's public meetings. In my opinion, after reading nearly 18 months of meeting minutes, I've concluded that our town's board and commissions are being fiscally responsible after more pertinent information was brought forward to them. Almost immediately following this referendum, our town's budget was cut significantly by the state, and all town departments were forced to cut budgets by almost 2.5%. The details of the entire plan should have been required before this ever proceeded to a referendum vote. Our previous town leadership failed us by allowing this to get to referendum without proper due diligence. For those of you that were involved in this process then, shame on you. I urge our current board and commissions to be steadfast in the development of our commercial business that will support the look, feel, and needs of our community. Our community that is filled with the rural charm that keeps generations here and draws new families to want to live away from the hustle of a more progressive urban environment. I have been a resident for 26 years and intentionally moved to the west side of town to ensure my family can experience the wildlife, getting to know the farmers on my street, and playing in the woods. As new residents are moving to town, I cannot imagine they are making a decision to move here without learning what the dynamic is and what services we have or do not have to offer. Our school district population is growing, and with it, an increase in operating costs. I am confident the youth center that has been tirelessly worked on for the past year is not seeing enough interest that would remotely support expanding its offerings into a community center environment. Park and rec activities are being canceled regularly for lack of interest, and on a good day, during drop-in times, 2 to 3 kids are showing up at best. Having an 8,000 square foot gym will not change that. In a perfect world, we could sustain our rural charm and have every amenity desired at our fingertips. This is not reality. Most cannot manage this balance in their personal life. How can we expect local government to manage this for an entire community that religiously fights to prevent overdevelopment? I thank everyone for their thankless work and appreciate having a forum where we can collaboratively come to a solid decision for the long-term benefit of the town.
Karen Barazzi, 53 Boysenberry Court. 4 years ago, the Suffield voters approved the renovation of Bridge Street School to provide a community center. The first select woman campaigned with an appearance that she supported the center. But from the time she got into office, she has pushed her agenda, obstructing the renovation of Bridge Street School at every turn. I personally believe that a community center is a progressive idea that would enhance the lives of citizens in Suffield for the long-term future. But frankly, my opinion doesn't count. What matters is the will of the voters. The voters approve the use of funds for a community center. If the town feels they need to demolish Bridge Street School because of all their facts, then an informed decision needs to be made at the ballot by all the voters, not at a meeting that was a well-kept secret. In my opinion, it is unacceptable that there are community leaders who misinform, manipulate the facts, carry on backroom deals, and worst of all, smear reputations of those they want out of the way, all to ensure that their personal agendas are accomplished. I ask that the Board of Selectmen have the moral courage to do the right thing and listen to the voice of the voters. Thank you.
Ann Borg, 1310 Mountain Road. I would like to address some of the drainage issues that were just brought up. I've been over Bridge Street School, walking around a couple of times, and I've seen that gutters are not attached at the top. One of the gutters in the front is hanging there, and it's been hanging there for 2 years. I reported that to the Public Works Department, and nothing got fixed. They're still hanging there, so of course there's water going in there. And I do remember that Mel Chaffetz, as principal of that school, requested funds time after time after time to have new drainage put in to solve the problem of the water in the basement. And every time he got turned down by the Board of Finance. So really, that's an ongoing problem that we could probably fix if people would do their diligence. I also note that although the town put out those long black hoses to carry the water away from the building, most of the time they're not attached. I've gone around attaching them, and people are unattaching them, I think, because they're not just blowing off. So something's going on there with water, and it's obvious why we have water in the basement.
Jeff Kane, 806 River Boulevard. I have a question, and I'd like to follow that with an observation or two.
Can't hear you. Closer.
Jeff Kane, 806 River Boulevard. I have a question, and I'd like to follow that with a brief comment or two. Legally binding resolution was passed, as we all know, 4 years ago. Please state the statute or bylaw that allows for rescinding that in this venue.
Well, I'll start off by saying that this is public comment and not a Q&A, but I will ask the bond council to stand up again and answer this. Did you hear the question? It's kind of hard to hear. Could you repeat it louder? We could barely hear you up here.
Please state the bylaw or statute that allows for a legally binding referendum to be rescinded in this venue. Please. A legally binding referendum was passed. Please state the statute or bylaw that allows it to be rescinded in this venue.
She actually gave us an opinion on this, and I have it right here if you want to look at your opinion.
I don't, just state cite the statute or the bylaw.
Thank you. So, in your charter, section 1006J, the Board of Selectmen has the power to call a town meeting for the purpose of rescinding it. So, although you made the comment that it's a legally binding resolution.
Referendum.
The resolution passed a referendum, and it is legal, but it's not a mandate that if a project can't go forward for whatever reason it might be, that it has to be completed. and that the funds have to be borrowed.
Could you cite the number?
That doesn't answer the question. You're proposing that it be rescinded tonight, and I'm asking where is that stated that that's legal?
Within your charter,
Where in what charter?
the charter of the town of Suffield.
Could you cite the number you just said?
Yeah, so the Board of Selectmen can call the meeting for the purpose under section 1006J and present the question to referendum pursuant to 1009A of the charter. But and as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be rescinded in order to stop working on a project.
Thank you. My comment is tonight is with respect to the community center. All I've heard is a bunch of redebating, and the time the debate has ended, as we all know, 4 years ago. The veracity of the opposition that has now been brought forward again. At that time ended. I wonder where these documents were and this information, because this was again people on for and against the repurpose of the Bridge Street School. We're digging deep, and the people for were doing assessments that came up with a solid 8.4 million. So all I'm hearing is a lot of re-debate. The time for that ended. The will of the people mandated that we move forward with this, and it was the duty of the newly soon-to-be elected first councilman to lead the timely and efficient implementation of that mandate. And I've heard over the last 4 years about these crazy suspension of RFPs, and we've also heard that the best price we could get was 80% over. That doesn't wash, and there's not sufficient reason to believe that if this had moved forward properly, and that it still can, that it could come in within $8.4 million. And as Ray pointed out, who I happen to know is an expert in renovations. He has great expertise in this area. If it turns out, in fact, that removal of PCBs and getting rid of a few light ballasts, I think we all have to really stop. And I think the only fair and just thing to do is to put this up for another referendum in front of the people of Suffield with ample time for both sides, ample venue to present information for and against. Otherwise, in this day and age, where back when things happened bad, and we're seeing all over the globe, all over our country, the time for democracy is right now, right here in Suffield, where we're going to either enact the will of the people, or we're going to put it back to them if merited.
I just want to make a comment to everybody here tonight, and anybody else wants to listen. Tonight's, whether we vote this up or down tonight, doesn't matter. If say we approve this resolution, it's going to go to a town meeting, and it's going to go to possibly a referendum too. So tonight is not the final decision. Tonight is the start of a process. So I hope that answers you made a comment, I think, sir, that that it should go to a town meeting and referendum, and it will. I hear what you said, but it's going to go to a town meeting and or a referendum.
It was enacted by a vote referendum. If there's going to be a movement to seriously rescind it, that in turn should be a vote referendum, not a town meeting. People
Well, I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, we're the
Town meeting
location
is-
changes at the last minute, like that. The only fair and just thing, again, we're in a democracy that's pretty shaky right now. The only fair and just thing to do if we're going to seriously consider rescinding this, and maybe there is information that wasn't there, like, we're all reasonable people here. Maybe there was catastrophic information that people just were unaware about in terms of the condition of that property. But the only way to fairly actually rescind this is to bring out a referendum vote.
I agree with you. And I think because town meetings can be stacked, I think the referendum is the way to go. And I've been that way for the 14 years I've been on this select board. So.
My name is Gail Lamagna. I live on River Boulevard. I haven't been as deeply involved as a lot of people have in this project, but when I have come to meetings from this administration and the previous administration, I've had negativity just wafting through the room all the time. It's obvious that this has not been a priority. And when other projects like the town hall renovation, I saw it in the paper that goes back. We got another study done on it. We got more. And the town garage, even that I have not followed, but I hear you took everybody's concerns and you really went back and tried to resolve those. I don't see that that's happened on this at all. My other comment, I have 3 children, they're all millennials. And talking to them, I get a lot of feedback that when we talk politics, my kids say our votes don't count. I guess they're right.
Kate Powers, 62 Hydrangea Lane. And I just want to say that I did vote for the Bridge Street Community School, and I was all for it until...
Could you speak up a little bit?
Sure. I have 3 kids in the school system, and I was for the Bridge Street School when it was under the referendum, and I did vote for it. However, I've seen that we've tried to make other arrangements for community use, like the senior center that found out it wasn't being used by seniors, and actually it's being used by seniors. The seniors that do use it are from out of town. There's been a really little rate of people using that building. And so the first selectman actually, I think she did something so that it wasn't just for seniors. I think the grant was allowed only for senior use, and now it's for all use of the community. And I've been to a Girl Scout event there that was wonderful. My kids did a chess program there that went on for a couple weeks. That was great. It's a great space for the community, and it's actually right across the street from the Bridge Street School. The youth program person was working there and had a room for teens. It had games. The kid rode his bike there to hang out there, but it really wasn't being used. So I really, because of the cost of the Bridge Street School and the fact that it was a sick building when they closed it, and I feel like it would have been fixed 15 years ago or repurposed 15 years ago if it was possible. So, and now I really think we should deal with this Bridge Street School that's been sitting vacant for, I don't know, we moved here 10 years ago. It's been boarded up for that long. I think we should make the community look nicer. It looks terrible as you drive into our town. We should put a nice park there with a playground for families. I think that would be a great alternative for me. And that's why I changed my mind.
My name is Lawrence Wrigley. I live 636 Bridge Street. I'd like to add to that comment. I was also very much in favor because I live half a minute down the road from the Bridge Street School. It's a place I took taking my daughter when there was a playground there. It's a great site. There's, the fields that are there, people use as they are. They would certainly benefit by improvement. But I think listening to this, I see there's really kind of 2 sides to, maybe more than 2 sides. There's sort of 2 projected expectations that I'd like to just try to elaborate. And I voted in favor of it 4 years ago. I was voting for something that I thought would be a benefit to the town, community resource that would improve our ability to communicate and collaborate and share our community character. I'm also, I come from a long history of Yankee families. I love old buildings. I gotta say, I really, New England has a terrific character for its old buildings that you don't see in many other places, especially this Connecticut Valley, where we have all these old mill buildings, we have all kinds of old brick buildings. But I really, if I were to break it into 2 things, I'm thinking, I voted for a community resource that would maybe make use of something with some historic character. What I hear a lot of people explaining here, or maybe favoring, is maybe their personal attachment to the history of this building, and I don't blame you for that. I really kind of understand and value. I respect that. But if it really is such a liability, and you know, if you have been in these old buildings and seen up front the difficulty in remediating, I know, you know, we've had experts come here and describe it, but, you know, it's not just the mold and the ballast. Yeah, you can remove the lights, but all the lead paint, you take that paint out, it flakes, it's it's nearly impossible unless you completely shred the building. I mean, you have to shell everything to get all of that out. Then you have to really kind of go around with a vacuum cleaner and a toothbrush to get every last bit of that out. I just can't see that really being a viable option here. And I'm sad to say that, but I think it's true of many old buildings that we love. So I'm sad to say, yes, I voted for it, but I can see from a very pragmatic point of view, and I'm sorry to say I hear some snarky comments about people's intentions. I don't think there is malicious motivation or negligent motivation going on here. I absolutely do not see that. And I'm on a board of directors in another town for a condominium. I'm really kind of part of micro-government. I've had to make decisions like this. I know what it's like to try to get something done, and you just can't, the budget just doesn't work. You know, it's not, we voted in favor of funding this thing, but that's what we really voted on was the funding, you know, presumably for the school, but you can't get it bonded. You cannot go out and sell those bonds without, you know, an approved plan, you know, a realistic plan. Somebody's going to buy that bond assuming that you can complete that project. And if you aren't able to present that, you know, you're negligent, right? And we've made an effort to do that. And it just, you know, given the new information that we have, the fact is, that $8 million would be much better spent on something else. Thank you.
I'm Dave Gothier from Phelps Road. I originally did vote for this. And over the last 4 years, I've sort of changed my mind. I hear a lot about the building. It's not about a building. It's about programs for our kids. I haven't heard anyone talk about the programs. I spoke to the board of selectmen just a little while ago about pay to participate. The pay to park up here. You know, our board of ed is not getting the money they're asking for. If they can't get the money, and you put up a building, where's the money going to come from for the programs? I really would rather someone make a needs assessment of the programs we need and then ask for more money for the programs rather than a building. You can get a building anywhere, and this town has a lot of space at the moment. On the board of ed, you can see that there are empty rooms around town. I'd really rather spend my money on the programs for the kids now. They need a lot of help in some areas rather than a building.
Hi, Crystal Holmes, 42 Michael Lane. I did record my comment. It's a little longer than 3 minutes, but please bear with me. This project has been a labor of love, and I think it deserves the ability to have a conversation. I come here tonight dismayed and disheartened at our town's democracy. Our first selectman in this board, the last 4 years have showed that there has been little respect for duty to process, principles, or ethics. As a board, you have an obligation to carry out the will of the people, and that has not happened here. My comment tonight does not focus on the merit of a community center, the positive economic development a community center would bring to our community, the importance of preservation of a historic building in town, because that debate ended 4 years ago when we all voted yes at a referendum. Never in the recent history of this town has a referendum vote been ignored at the whim of a first selectman. The precedent it is setting is dangerous. I'd like to briefly discuss the timeline that brought us here tonight, because I think it's important to show how the board has breached their duties and obligations under the charter, following through on the vote by residents. Once the vote was approved, in October of 2015, the PBC started discussions about the project. In January of 16, the process to hire an environmental engineer was commenced to confirm the abatement costs. I will agree, the abatement costs were not included in the $8.4 million, but it was always assumed that the town would pay that, and it was assumed at $500,000 at that time. I agree, it was an oversight to not include it, but you have to remember that you had a group of residents that were banding together to do this with the help of the town. So I can agree that that was an oversight, but every discussion that happened regarding abatement, it was always known that the town would abate the building. So the 8.4 was always just construction costs. That said, in April of 2016, the engineer report was received. So we did an additional engineering study on top of the many other studies that we've done. In May of 16, RFPs went out for the abatement contractors. Bids were received in 2016. 2 of them were under $300,000 total, and 2 of them were just over $600,000. So it proves that the cost to remediate was close to the original estimates of $500,000. In August of 2016, Melissa requested a second construction estimate. This is the Gilbane estimate that she referenced in her presentation. That was $9.9 million. If you look at the cost estimate in detail, the hard costs were equal, actually less, than the $8.4 million estimate we received from Silver Petroselli. The largest difference was the inclusion of the abatement costs, exorbitant levels of soft costs, and in excess of contingency of 35 to 40%. This 2016 meeting concluded with our construction experts on the Permanent Building Commission stating the project could be done with value engineering to meet the 8.4, and it was agreed at that tri-board meeting to move forward with the design phase. I want to add a side note here. At this same meeting, Gilbane gave estimates for the town hall renovation, which was $8.7 million, well over the $5.2 million that was approved by the town at the same referendum. This is a 40% cost increase. Melissa still supported this project despite the high estimate and moved forward to hire an architect and construction manager, allowing them to value engineer to fit the approved budget. The vote wasn't rescinded on the town hall because of this one fact. This is a massive double standard. Following the September 2016 meeting, the PBC and Town Council spent 9 months working on an RFP for an architect and construction manager. Bids were received in July and August, and then in September, without consultation with the Board of Selectmen, Melissa unilaterally decided to not sign the contract, citing the following reasons. The Gilbane estimate, which was a misrepresentation of facts to suit the agenda of not moving the project forward. The state budget crisis, which never came to be, and the prioritization of other projects ahead of Bridge Street, including the completion of the library, which is now done. Lastly, she repeatedly stated there was no money in the budget for the Bridge Street School project, when in fact, the referendum vote was the appropriation of funds. As Mrs. Bond Council, sorry, I was calling you Mrs. Lather, that's incorrect. But as Bond Council also said, speaking of money, Melissa will say she didn't want to waste taxpayer money on the necessary due diligence because the project may not go forward. But we have spent over $400,000 on town hall studies, designs, and temporary rent, another double standard. The calculated dismantling of our town vote should not stand. Since the time Melissa unilaterally tabled this project, she has tried to piecemeal our ideas and concepts. The creation of a youth center at the senior center. While a wonderful idea, this was part of our concept. The idea of housing everything in one building is powerful. Piecemealing our services to our residents isn't the solution that we asked for 4 years ago. In addition, the bold recommendation being made today to take the parcel and make an athletic field in a small playscape is not what we asked for, and is clearly not the best use of prime downtown real estate. We have failed our duties to maintain this town asset, and we are conveniently using the condition now as a catalyst for the drastic action happening today. This board also reappropriated the $500,000 Main Street investment grant that we worked on to get for this project for another town use. All these facts point to the fact that we have leadership who never made serious attempts to follow through on the vote or will of the people. It is frustrating to have gone through the proper process, to have won the vote fairly, and to see one person unilaterally kill this project through the waste of time the last 4 years. And this is why I'm here today, to fight for this precedent to not be set, to implore the board to do the right thing, and we should move forward with the design phase of this project. The design phase, I've said this for the last 2 years since you stopped the project in 2017, this project deserves to go forward to that step and know if it can be done. And it will be on your conscience, truly, if we don't see what this project could really cost.
Even though I yielded my time, it won't take long. Rich Sturmonsky, Main Street, North Main Street. The gentleman asked for the citation, what would justify this action, and I looked it up in our town charter, and it says, this is section 1006J. In addition to all matters, in addition to all matters requiring town meeting approval, the Board of Selectmen may bring before the town meeting, including a special town meeting, for its consideration on any other matter where the Board of Selectmen considers of sufficient importance to warrant town meeting consideration. I think what I'm interpreting that is that if you don't like a referendum, you could bring it up until you get the result that you want. That's what's been cited that justifies your action today.
Scott Lingenfelter, South Stone Street. For years, I've said this building to be torn down. I grew up in that building after school every day. My mother taught there, and I'd go there, visit the building. It had mold then. It had mold in the 80s. It had mold in the 90s. It was a building that when I came first selectman, I said tear it down. I was on the Board of Ed when we closed the building. I was the one vote against closing it at the time because I said until you have a use for that building, keep operating. Well, we closed it. I did tell Ted Flanders, let's condemn the building. It's not safe for people to be in at the time. I still stand by that. However, 4 years ago, we did have a vote on this project. I voted against it. But today, we're here to ignore the will of that vote. The vote should matter. People in this town are given a choice. And they go out to the polls and vote. Our boards, our commissions, our leaders should follow those votes and do what they've been demanded to do by those votes. So today, the Board of Selectmen wants to rescind that vote. And Selectman Reynolds said, we'll put it back to another referendum if we have to. What are they going to do then? What if the people again say, we want this project to go forward, and they don't like that result? Is this board going to again ignore the will of the people and just keep sending it back and back and back? These votes need to have consequences. And the people made a decision. The Board of Selectmen for 4 years has not acted on that. And as Crystal Holmes pointed out, the same problems that this budgetary issue has with this project, we had for the town hall project. But there's no thoughts about stopping that because you all like that project. You don't want this one. The vote should matter.
Tracy McDonough, 26 Conservation Road. So I find it very interesting about the idea of listening to the voters. And I agree, yes, we totally should. We have a democracy. We listened to the voters when it came to the library. And look at where we ended up. We ended up in a very, very bad, very fiscally bad position with that library. What did that do? It had a snowball effect on this town. It took so many years to get to the point that we could reopen that library. By doing that, this town does not have the infrastructure to handle a library, a town hall, a garage, and a community center all at the same time. So by doing what we did with that library, we ended up where we are today, having this conversation. So I think overall, this town needs to take a better look at what it wants to do. It needs to have a better plan as to how we are going to build this town, grow this town, and use its financial resources, because without doing that, we're going to end up right back continuing to have these conversations. Thank you.
Hi, Nan Burke, Blossom Street. Beth Shafitz wasn't able to be here, so I would just like to read a statement.
Closer.
Beth Shafitz wasn't able to be here, so I would like to read a statement on her behalf. She's from 803 Mapleton Avenue. The current BSCC group worked for approximately 6 years to finally see passed a referendum vote that supported the renovation of BSS as a community center. Then we waited while the PBC did their due diligence over the next 2 years. We were excited when the PBC was finally ready to choose an architect and construction manager at risk for the BSCC project. Imagine everyone's surprise and outrage when our current first selectman single-handedly stopped the project on the evening the PBC was to move forward. We waited another 2 years while excuses for not moving ahead were made, but mostly there was silence. Meanwhile, the building slowly deteriorated, a shameful lack of respect for both the history of our town and the voice of the people. This fortress of building is still a viable option for a community center. What we need are leaders with vision and a commitment to honor the choice our community has already made. The referendum vote has been ignored, our votes as citizens have been ignored, and this precedent should not be allowed to stand. When has a referendum vote ever been ignored? Never.
Patricia Cosmo, 215 Holiday Avenue. I'm a lifelong resident of Suffield. I did go to Bridge Street School, but I can get beyond just being a member of the school as a student. I really would like to say that when we think about Bridge Street School, it has the kinds of things that could bring the youth together with our elderly and growing communities of people. There are activities where young can learn from older people can learn from younger people. And that is why it was going to be a community center. It's going to have ball fields if you need them. Playgrounds, look around. I've talked to several people, and a lot of times those playgrounds are not filled with children and adults, and they should be, or could be. The other thing that sort of bothers me is the fact that we do have the referendum that passed. We must follow through. This is not something that we should let go to a side and to a different path. It's really important for us to follow through with our voters' ideas and what we put forward. Thank you.
Tom Fernay, Watertown Road. I feel in some ways like this meeting is an ambush. An agenda was posted 24 hours ago with some pretty significant things on it, and there had been virtually no discussions in the last several years about Bridge Street School other than, oh, it's on hold until the library is done. So I would urge you not to vote tonight on sending this resolution to town meeting. I think you should wait. I think it shouldn't just depend on the voices that come out on a rainy night. I just think you're being a little too precipitous in making this potential decision. We all come to this meeting, we don't know what you're going to present, and we don't have anything to take away because there's no handout. And I think it's your job to be telling the town much more clearly why this is something that you believe shouldn't go forward. Especially when a referendum vote passed it, not by a 9-to-1 margin, by 100 votes, but that's all that matters. It passed. And I don't always agree with Mr. Langenfelder back there, but that's probably a good thing. But I agree with him. The town voted, it made a decision, and I believe it's the selectmen and the Board of Finance that have to figure out how to make sure this project gets moving forward or to a point where it's much more clear that it can't be done. Because I don't feel like the information we've been given so far makes it very clear that it can't be done. It sounds like it's a few people who don't want it to be done. But it's not clear to me anyhow that it can't. So I suggest you take some time, think about it, don't rush this. Haven't rushed anything for 4 years. Let's have a discussion about it, not an ambush. Thank you.
Chris Childs, I'm on the Board of Finance, lives on South Main Street. The ambush is, I think, an appropriate expression. Last night we had a Board of Finance meeting. The selectman always has commentary and brings before us any hot new issues, anything that she is seeing on the agenda, anything that we should be thinking about with regard to town finances. This never came up. She's talking about spending, I believe, I read somewhere $900,000. It's not presented to the Board of Finance. She's talking about rescinding a bond. Last night we were talking about what to be including in our next bond issue and how we were going to be staggering bonds over the next 10 years. This did not come up again. To Tom Frenay's point, I think that this needs to be vetted appropriately at Board of Finance and before the Board of Selectmen, not something that's just brought before us at a sudden rush. It has been 4 years. It has come up at Board of Finance meetings. I've brought it up a number of times, always to be just flushed away. And I too agree with Mr. Langenfelder's comments. It was a vote. We need to move forward.
And Warren, 1310 Mountain Road. I would just like to address the remediation problem. You mentioned that it wasn't included in our original plans for Bridge Street School, but I'd like to remind people that when we take that building down, we still have to pay the remediation costs before it come down, which is why we didn't include it in the original bond issue. It has to be paid whether the building is fixed or whether the building is demolished.
So the motion is to rescind the approval of the Bridge Street School Community Center project and refer to town meeting. Do we have any discussion? Yes.
This has been going on for 4 years now since the referendum took place, which I was in favor of having a referendum, as I usually am. To me, if the project isn't going to come in at the price that the referendum approved, then it's going to be pretty tough to do it. It wasn't 100,000, it was 200,000 over. It was close to $10 million. And we all know what problems we have with old buildings in this town, as we saw in the library, which isn't even nearly as old as that Bridge Street School. I'm not sure how you can fit $10 million into $8.4 million. That's too big of a difference. And so I disagree with the people who say we haven't done enough research. I think the first selectman's done a tremendous amount of research. using expertise, people who don't even live in the town, but are Gilbane Construction, who you can't find a better contractor. So I disagree with that. I think we've done a lot of work on this, and although the referendum did approve it by 100 votes, I do think that we have to rescind at this point and do what we have to do.
I agree with a lot of what Tim said, but I do agree that the town does have to do that remediation, and the Gilbane number did include remediation, which still puts it at $1 million over what the estimate, what the bond was. And again, that's my concern. I don't think it can be done for the 8.4 million, and then what? And we ask the voters, or we ask the taxpayers to pay more for it. I don't, and to be honest, the library issue scares the life out of me. We don't know what's going to happen in another little building.
I'm not sure if this is the time for the vote. All right. Mel Chaffetz is not here tonight and unable to attend the meeting. He asked me to read this statement and put it into the minutes of the meeting. He says, "Unfortunately, I am out of town and cannot attend the BOS meeting. I find it ironic that in the last 4 years, we never discussed or voted on the community center, even when the first selectman unilaterally decided to not honor the referendum vote. A town meeting, then a referendum vote to approve the community center. This vote was totally disregarded. It's a disgrace that after letting the building deteriorate, the first selectman wants a vote to demolish the building. I vote he is voting against any motion to demolish the Bridge Street School." I also have one of my own. I don't know if it's the time to do it, but on the vote. I am a third generation Suffield. Many of us remember our beautiful old Main Street with its quaint shops, iconic town hall, and 2 stunning bank buildings, never to be enjoyed again. Historic buildings like the Bridge Street School are a treasure. To destroy a piece of Suffield history would be a shame. Over 1,000 people voted to approve an $8.4 million bond to repurpose the Bridge Street School to a much-needed community center and much-needed gymnasium. For this board to vote to ignore an attempt to rescind a referendum is setting a very, very dangerous precedent. I think we need to think about it when we go to vote in November.
So I want to just make
I have one more.
go ahead, yep.
We are not disregarding the $8.4 million vote. The price came in $1.6 million approximately over the 8.4. So we're not disregarding the vote. The price didn't come in at what it was supposed to come in at. If you remember, when this high school went up to bond, there were 2 referendums. The first referendum passed, 1,000, 1,500 votes. They couldn't do the work for what the price came out for. And I think I'm remembering this correctly. They had to send it to a second referendum to do it the right way. So it's not the first time it's happened in this town. I know somebody said it's the first time it's ever happened. It's not.
And I think one more thing needs to be reiterated here is that this was not a yes-no vote. There were documents behind the resolution. Okay, what you approved in the referendum was the title of the resolution. The resolution was a document, and it had conditions that had to be met. And those conditions were not met. As bond counsel has mentioned, this was not a mandate. It was a permissive vote where we could move forward if certain conditions were met in the bond authorization. I didn't draft that bond authorization. This bond council didn't draft that bond authorization. This board inherited that bond authorization from the prior first selectman. I don't know what his motives were. I don't know who drafted it, and I don't know why. What I do know is that the only 3 people that are authorized to move forward with the bond and issue the bond would be me and the finance director and the treasurer of the town. And the 3 of us, having read the documents, which I'm not sure everyone in this room has, agreed that we could not authorize signing a contract to move forward. We also consulted with our bond counsel, who would be the only one who could issue the bond opinion upon which investors would rely to sell the bond. If, with the facts and circumstances we had at the time, she could issue that opinion. And the answer was no. And so again, there were other ways to appropriate the between $250,000 and $500,000. They were requested of this board, of the Board of Finance, and ACE in the last budget, and none of them decided to move forward with it. So that's where we're at. That's the impasse that we're at on this authorized resolution. The other point I'd like to make is that I keep hearing that it has always been assumed that the town would pay for the remediation. I'd like to remind everyone that the town is one bucket of money. The $8.4 million would be paid for by the town's taxpayers, as would the other, $500,000, now $1 million. Who knows? Who knows what that is all town money, that is all taxpayer money, that is all your money. So by bifurcating this project into the abatement on one side and the project on the other is really just a way of making a more expensive project that is all borne by the town's taxpayers. Okay, any more comment?
I wanted to mention.
Any more comment by this board?
Same bond resolution you're
Okay.
referencing to kill Bridge Street is
I will
the
call
same
for-
bond resolution that you use for town hall.
I will call for a vote of this board.
Here, being
It's a
called.
point of order. Your feedback regarding Bridge Street, the same bond referendum wording was true for town hall, and the Gilbane estimate came in at 8.7, 40% higher than the 5.2 that was approved. And you were okay signing the construction manager and architect to move forward with that project.
Crystal, your facts are entirely incorrect. There is a $700,000 appropriation that was already in place for the town hall. When we got that expensive overestimate for town hall, if everyone remembers here, we went back to the drawing board and we commissioned EDM to do a space needs study because we found out that the same lack of due diligence had been performed on the town hall project and that we had gone to bond without actually knowing what we needed in town. So we stopped that project entirely. We used that $700,000, a portion of it, to hire another architect to go out and do a space needs study. And then we went and used, again, that pot of money that we already had. So the big difference between this project and the Bridge Street School project is you don't have that pot of money. If we want to move forward, say we decided right now we wanted to move forward and go ahead and get that guaranteed maximum price, I don't have a pot of money or an appropriation to move forward. So that is just an absolute incorrect representation of the facts. Completely different scenarios. And again, we started back at the drawing board. We got a couple of different varieties of a new build on the town hall, and we went back to square one because they were too expensive. And we realized that we needed to look at the scope of the project, which it turned out, because of different things that had different space needs things and assumptions that we had, most notably that we didn't need to locate the IT department back into the town hall. We are able to renovate that building within the original footprint and stay within the scope of the original appropriation in 2015. So there is a very big difference between those two projects. So now we would like to call for a vote. All in favor of the resolution?
We have another point of
Please
order.
say aye. No, there is no more points of order. I would like to, the town attorney, please come forward and take control of this.
This is the meeting of the Board of Selectmen, so the only people who can ask for a point of order are members of the Board of Selectmen. This is not a town meeting, which would afford that opportunity to anybody here, just to clarify.
Thank you.
Also, I wasn't sure I heard Joanne correctly or not, but to the extent that a vote was cast in abstention, Connecticut General Statutes doesn't recognize a vote being cast for members who are not in attendance, so just to be clear on that.
We haven't voted, we just read that.
Right, I wasn't entirely sure I heard it correctly, I just wanted to clarify that point for the crowd.
Thank you. Okay, back to the meeting. All in favor of the rescission approval of the Bridge Street School Community Center project and refer to town meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye, and I encourage everyone to go to the meetings, vote for the referendum again, or the town meeting, whatever comes next. We must get this through.
Okay, the next.
I make a motion to rescind bond resolution entitled Resolution to Appropriate $8.4 million for renovations and improvements to Bridge Street School for conversion to a town community recreation center, and to authorize the issue of bonds, notes, or temporary notes in an amount not to exceed $8.4 million to finance said appropriation and refer to town meeting.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Next item, item number 9, discussion and approval to A, is appropriate up to $700,000 for the demolition and hazardous abatement of 90 Bridge Street School. B, to issue a request for proposals for the installation of athletic playing fields and a small playscape on the site of 90 Bridge Street. And C, refer to the Board of Finance in town meeting.
So moved.
Do we have any discussion?
It's ridiculous to think that community center is being...
Can't hear you, Joanne.
To think that a playscape is going to take the place of a community center for all of the town, old and young, is ridiculous, and I am voting against it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the tax rebate to People's Bank in the amount of $1,236.40 due to overpayment. Okay, so we have one recusal.
I'll make a motion to approve the tax rebate to People's Bank in the amount of $1,236.40 due to overpayment.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And we need one more agenda item added.
I make a motion to amend the agenda to a 10A so that Paul Poulos would be able to speak.
I don't know if he's still here.
If he's still
No,
here.
I think he's gone. This one. I'm going to go on the tax rebate.
All right, so I make a motion for 10B, approval of a tax rebate to Scott W. and Christine R. Looney in the amount of $1,687.08, $1,662.32, and $1,622.64 due to overpayment.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next we have selectmen updates. Okay, so just very briefly, the town hall project is moving along. It's currently on budget. It will be discussed tomorrow night at the Permanent Building Commission, and we are in the design phase, I believe. So that's that. That's all I have for this evening. Any other updates?
Just a reminder, the Suffield 350th anniversary celebration The 102nd Army Band of the Connecticut National Guard is having a free concert on Saturday night here, right here in this room, at 6 o'clock. In addition, they're also going to have the 3 Second Rush Concert Band, the Army National Guard Brass Quintet, and the Jazz Combo teams will also be performing, and that is free of charge.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is public comment. We'll ask that public comment be on a topic that hasn't already been discussed this evening.
Can I ask something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know if this is appropriate or not.
Go ahead.
Diane Friedman, 119 Marvin Drive. I don't understand how you turned down the Bridge Street thing, but down was there any discussion about putting a playscape and that's all we're going to have over there in a playground or fields? Was there a discussion in town about doing that? And how did you decide that that's what you were doing?
So it's going to, everything's going to a town meeting.
Okay.
Nothing was decided here. It was just to move to go to a town meeting to discuss those very things.
Okay.
And the Bridge Street School Ad Hoc Committee did identify that we needed a playscape. And so we've already put one in over at Sunrise Park, which will be completed shortly. And so this one would be another one. So then we would have 2 in the town. It was identified as a need.
So instead of having a community center, we're going to have a playground. Thank you.
We can afford that.
Probably not.
Leah Burke, Blossom Street. I am just so disheartened. It's not about the Bridge Street thing. It's about the fact that most people here spoke tonight in favor of continuing something with the Bridge Street School, and you guys just maybe even giving a little more time. I heard from other town officials, and you didn't compromise one iota. You came in with your minds made up, and you did not listen to what people were saying. I'm just totally disheartened by that. It makes me lose all belief that you guys really are about doing your job and listening to the people.
So I'm not gonna say. It's been a long day. Michael Stevens, Conservation Road. A few of you might know it. Sorry, I'll speak up. I'm on a couple of boards and commissions. I'm with all those hats off. Sorry. Like I said, it's my voice, not the mic. First of all, thank you. The 4 of you, thank you. You have taken a lot of abuse, and that's the only way I could say. And to sit there with the stoic look on your face and to listen to this without fighting back, that's commendable. So how many people over here? So the 90 people, Leanne left, the 90 people do not represent the town. They don't. It's a subset of the town. 90 people do not represent the town. This town was held for the big discussion tonight. 2,100 voters came out. Just over 50% voted for this. So again, it's a subset of the town. This is not representative of the town. The people that are accusing these 4 people of not listening, they're doing their job. They are listening. They're just not listening to the loudest voices in the room who have the most emotions all the time during the sessions. And it's not fair. Treat them with respect. Okay? They're doing their job. You would like them to do a job that's not easy. Jeez. All right.
Totally different subject. Dave Gothier, Phelps Road. There was a lot of work done on the ordinances that are in horrible shape, although the new ones I've reviewed look pretty good. They're supposed to go to a town meeting for approval. Do we have any idea when that might occur, since we might be having a town meeting shortly?
Soon. I agree with you, you need to get that done. And so I was hoping that we would have other items to send, to not call people out for just ordinances, but it might look like we might just have to go out for ordinances. So I assure you, we're going to be calling that soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mountain Drive. Very different subject. It has to do with Bridge Street School. There is stored in Bridge Street School a great deal of material. Much of it, at least a good deal, some of it, I know some clear, let's say there are some key items in there that deal with the historical relics of the town and the material that should be in our historical room. That was taken out of the library rather quickly without being carefully inventoried, and I'm concerned as to making sure that it is recovered and brought back to good storage. Please don't just have the things brought out by people with gas masks on and quickly put in a truck to be discarded. If necessary, make a shelter, find a place to put it so that these things could be looked over, identified, and evaluated and kept if they're needed. And many of them are needed. Thank you.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is, do we have a motion to go into executive session to approve settlement with People's United regarding the Windsor Marketing Group delinquent taxes?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.